thought he killed the sacred snake. But months later, he discovered the terrifying truth. The monster wasn't dead. It was living inside his own stomach.
They thought they killed the beast for a quick fortune. But when he was forced to swallow its black heart, he didn't realize he was incubating a demon inside his own stomach. Welcome back to Horror Koko Town. Tonight, we journey deep into the suffocating, mist-covered jungles of the Ma Thien Lang Valley in Vietnam. This is not just a campfire tale meant to scare children. It is a chilling piece of local folklore about the ultimate price of human greed, karma, and a blood debt that spans generations. Turn off the lights, lock your doors, and listen closely to the terrifying legend of the sacred snake's deadly revenge. It began on a day when the mist in the valley was unnaturally thick, clinging to the ancient trees like pale, grasping fingers. The air was heavy, stifling, and smelled of decaying leaves and wet earth that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. 3 men were trekking through this unforgiving landscape. There was Uncle Chin, a seasoned hunter who knew the spoken and unspoken rules of the deep jungle. With him was Thak, a younger man driven by relentless greed, and V, a timid soul who only followed along to earn a little money for his pregnant wife waiting at home. As they navigated a treacherous, moss-covered cliffside, a pungent, fishy stench assaulted their senses. It wasn't the smell of a dead animal. It was the scent of something ancient. Following the odor, they squeezed through a narrow crevice in the rocks, shining their flashlights into the damp darkness. There, resting on a bed of rotting leaves, lay a creature that defied logic. It was a massive snake, but its scales were pure, pearlescent white, shimmering under the beam of the flashlight like polished bone. Running straight across the top of its head was a deep, blood-red crest. It didn't hiss. It didn't recoil. It simply stared at them with bottomless, ponnet, ink-black eyes that seemed to look right through their flesh and into their souls. Uncle Chin's face went pale. He slowly lowered his weapon and whispered a warning, telling them to step back. He knew the old legends. This was a spirit beast, a guardian of the mountain. To touch it was to invite a curse upon their entire bloodline. But Thak only saw a rare prize that could be sold to the wealthy. Ignoring the elder's desperate pleas, Thak lunged forward. With a brutal thrust of his spear, he pinned the magnificent creature to the damp earth. The white scales were instantly stained with bright red blood. As the snake took its final agonizing breaths, its dark eyes didn't look at Thak, its killer. Instead, those dead black eyes locked directly onto Vi. That night at their camp, the atmosphere was suffocating. The fire crackled, casting long, dancing shadows against the tarp. Thak, proud of his kill, began to butcher the snake. He sliced open its belly and pulled out a small, pitch-black mass, the snake's gallbladder, its spiritual core. With a cruel laugh, Thak turned to Vi. He grabbed the younger man by the throat, forcing his mouth open, and shoved the raw, foul-smelling mass down Vi's throat. Vi gagged, coughing violently as the bitter, fishy taste coated his tongue. As the black core slid down his esophagus, a freezing, unnatural cold settled deep into the pit of his stomach. He didn't know it, but he had just swallowed a death sentence. Deep in the night, as the fire died down to glowing red embers, the jungle grew eerily silent. Vi lay shivering in the cold, unable to sleep. Suddenly, from the pile of discarded snake scales in the corner of the camp, something moved. 2 glowing red eyes materialized in the darkness, burning like hot coals. Vi tried to scream, to wake the others, but his throat was paralyzed. The eyes stared at him with pure malice before melting back into the shadows. The vengeance of the sacred snake did not wait. The very next morning, Uncle Chin was nowhere to be found. After hours of frantic searching, they found him. He was hanging high in the branches of a crepe myrtle tree. But it wasn't a suicide. His limbs were twisted and broken in impossible, unnatural angles, bent backward as if an invisible, monstrous force had coiled around him and crushed his bones to dust. When they brought his broken body back to the village for the funeral, the air in his home turned freezing cold. Relatives gathered, weeping softly. Suddenly, a jet-black cat leaped down from the rafters, landing directly on the edge of the coffin before darting away. In that exact moment, the corpse of Uncle Chin sat bolt upright. The mourners screamed and scattered. Uncle Chin's dead eyes rolled back, revealing milky white voids. With a stiff, horrifying movement, the corpse turned its head directly toward Tak. It raised a rigid, dead hand, pointing a rotting finger at the man who had brought the curse upon them. It took a violent blow with a mulberry branch to finally force the corpse back into its eternal sleep. But Thok knew, right then and there, that the sacred snake's deadly revenge had officially begun. The karma did not just target the hunters. It sought out the innocent blood they loved the most. Days later, Thok's beloved 8-year-old daughter, Nak, was washing dishes by the murky river behind their home. The water was usually calm, but today, a strange, swirling current disturbed the surface. Without warning, a massive, shadowy coil erupted from beneath the muddy water. It didn't have a human shape. It was long, winding, and terrifyingly fast. Hearing a splash, Thok ran to the riverbank and dove into the raging water. He swam frantically, reaching out and brushing against something cool, rough, and scaly. He watched in absolute horror as the dark shadow wrapped around his little girl and pulled her down into the abyss. When the villagers finally recovered her small body days later, Thok made a discovery that shattered his mind. Around his daughter's pale wrists were deep red, overlapping marks. They weren't bruises from human hands. They were the distinct, unmistakable imprints of heavy snake scales. The grief and terror finally broke Thok. He stopped speaking. He stopped walking upright. He retreated into the darkest corners of his house, slithering on his belly under the bed. His eyes turned bloodshot, and he would constantly flick his tongue out to lick the damp floor. He began shedding his skin, tearing at his flesh with his fingernails. The spirit of the snake had completely taken over his soul. Witnessing his friend's descent into monstrous madness, V knew he was next. The paralyzing cold in his stomach was growing every day. Desperate to save his pregnant wife, Tram, Vi packed their meager belongings and fled in the dead of night to the crowded, anonymous streets of Saigon. They rented a cheap, damp room on the 5th floor of an old, decaying apartment building. But you cannot run from a karmic blood debt. The apartment was plagued by the sounds of bare feet running down the empty corridors at 2 a.m. Strange, rhythmic knocking echoed on their door, and Tram claimed to see the pale faces of children staring through the wooden slats. The stress and the dark energy surrounding them triggered Tram to go into premature labor. Rushing her to the hospital in the middle of the night, V felt an unseen, crushing weight on his shoulders. The doctors performed an emergency C-section, but the news was grim. The baby's heart was failing. As V paced the sterile, empty hospital corridor, the fluorescent lights began to flicker violently, buzzing like dying insects before completely going out. The temperature plummeted, turning the air to ice. From the shadows, tiny, pale hands reached out from the floor, grasping at V's ankles. They were the wandering spirits of unborn children, drawn by the massive dark energy that Vi carried. And then, looming in the darkness at the end of the hall, an enormous undulating shadow materialized. 2 glowing red eyes burned through the darkness, locking onto Vi. The snake hadn't followed him to attack his wife. It was inside him. The black core he had swallowed all those months ago was alive, growing, and feeding on his vital energy. Because V's life force was running low, the demonic parasite was now reaching out, draining the pure, newborn energy of his fragile son in the incubator. Pushed to the absolute brink of despair, V sought out Master Batu, a legendary and ruthless Cambodian sorcerer hidden deep within the city's alleyways. The master took one look at Vi's pale, sunken face and knew the horrifying truth. The master explained that the core wasn't digested. It had become a spiritual parasite. To save the baby, they had to force the demon out of Vi's flesh. That night, in a secluded courtyard, the master drew a protective circle and lit 7 massive candles. Vi sat bare-chested in the center, trembling as the master handed him a boiling, pitch-black mixture of sacred ashes and wild herbs. The moment Vi swallowed the liquid, a violent, agonizing war erupted inside his stomach. The holy energy of the master's potion clashed directly with the ancient, malicious resentment of the snake. Vi collapsed to the stone floor, his body convulsing violently. He screamed, clutching his stomach, as if his organs were being shredded from the inside out. Master Batu chanted relentlessly, his voice booming over Vi's cries, driving long silver needles into the pressure points along Vi's spine to block the entity's escape. With one final blood-curdling roar, Vi's back arched like a bow. He vomited violently, expelling a massive black, fleshy mass onto the stone floor. It was wrapped in a viscous, milky membrane, pulsing and writhing on the ground like a cluster of living snake scales. Master Batu didn't hesitate. He drew a hunting knife and drove the blade straight through the demonic mass. Black smoke hissed violently into the air, smelling of rotting flesh and ancient earth. The mass shriveled and died. The oppressive, freezing air instantly vanished. The curse was severed. At that exact second, miles away in the neonatal intensive care unit, the monitors tracking V's newborn son began to beep with a steady, strong rhythm. The baby's lungs expanded. His skin flushed pink, and the doctors were left baffled by the miraculous recovery. The nightmare was finally over. Vi eventually returned to his home, rebuilt the snake god's shrine, and lived a quiet, humble life, forever honoring the spirits of the forest. But karma always leaves a receipt. A debt of blood is never truly erased without a scar. Years later, on a quiet summer afternoon, Vi was bathing his healthy, laughing 3-year-old son on the porch. As he poured cool water over the boy's back and gently dried him with a towel, V's hand suddenly froze. His heart stopped beating in his chest. There, on the back of his son's neck, just below the hairline, was a permanent dark brown birthmark. Vi traced it with a trembling finger. The skin wasn't smooth. It was rough, textured, and patterned perfectly, like the overlapping scales of a snake. A permanent, chilling reminder that some entities never truly leave. Thank you for braving the dark with us tonight on Horror Koko Town. If this terrifying legend sent shivers down your spine, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most horrifying mysteries. Have you ever heard of a curse that couldn't be broken? Tell us in the comments below. Until next time, respect the unseen and stay safe in the dark.